So at this point, I would like to call the meeting of the Rotary Club of Park Cities to order. Where'd I put the bell? It's so official. I am Barb Jeffries, and this is our 32nd meeting of the year. Thank you all for joining us. If I don't, I'm pretty sure I see one guest at least, which I'm happy to see join us. If you could unmute and introduce yourself, be great. I think I saw Aaron on the call.
Hi, my name is Aaron, and I did join the meeting last week, Friday. And this is the second time I'm attending the meeting. And I'm from Zambia, lived in Ohio, attended Rotary in Ohio, and we moved here to Dallas, Texas.
Great. Aaron also participated on our PCR Connect call last night. So we got to learn a little bit more about Aaron, and hopefully he will be joining us as a member once he returns. He's going to be out of the country for a little bit, but he promised to come back. Great. Any other guests on the call? If not, if anyone has any joys and concerns before we start with the invocation, if you would unmute yourself and share with us. If not, we will go to our birthdays. We've got a few birthdays. Matter of fact, we have a couple of members celebrating their birthday today. Pam Carvey and Joe McMahon. Today is their birthday. And then Michael Rainwaters is coming up next week. And this slide is there to remind all of us to, in honor of your March birthdays, this is a good time to make your donation, either to the RI Foundation, which we'll get to hear more about later with Greg Pape, or to the RCPC Foundation, our own internal foundation. So just a reminder, if you celebrated in March, it's a good time to make those donations. Thank you. At this point, I'm going to introduce our next three speakers, and we'll just let the program roll. First, we're going to have Jody Ray. Thank you. Jody will be doing our invocation, our pledge, and our national anthem, which will again be Ian Mudge. And then I don't know that I see Happy on the call. Happy Franklin is, I think she'll probably join in a few minutes, but she's going to be doing our marketplace advertiser, which is spotlighting Martinez today. And then Greg Pape is here. Thank you, Greg, with our Rotary Foundation update. So we're going to start with Jody, please. You need to unmute. Thank you, Jody.
Let us pray to God together. As spring begins to renew your world around us, God, help us to renew ourselves to do your work among your people. Help us to find new energy within ourselves, even in the face of a pandemic extending more than a year. Help us to achieve new levels of commitment to reduce the needs struggling around us. Help us to inspire expanding hope, even in the face of our difficult world of 2020 and 2021. Thank you for all that you do for us each day, and give us your blessing in all that we do. Amen.
Amen.
And now the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose front rise and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave
Thank you, Jody. Happy. Let's talk a little bit about Mark Neese and his business. There we go.
If you could come back to me, that would be great. I had to restart my computer.
Okay, we will. We'll go to Greg Pape and then we'll come back to you, Happy. Thank you. Greg, let's tell us
All
about
right.
our a wonderful, incredible RI Foundation.
Little update reminding our members, the mission of the Rotary Foundation of Rotary International is to enable Rotarians to advance world understanding, goodwill, and peace through the improvement of health, the support of education, and the alleviation of poverty. EREY, some members have been dropping me a few emails. What does that stand for? It's every Rotarian every year. It's an initiative that encourages all Rotary Club members to contribute $100 every year to help support the Rotary Foundation. And our donation can have, for as little as 60 cents, a child can be protected from polio. $50 can provide clean water to help fight waterborne illnesses, as example. All part of the 6-step program area of focus with the Rotary International Foundation. Year to date, from July 1 of 2020 to March the 19th today, we've had 49 members contribute a total of $22,970 towards the Rotary International Foundation. 18,000 of that comes from 18 individuals that have made Paul Harris Fellow level contributions, which is $1,000 or more. So bravo to our club and to our members for supporting the Rotary International Foundation. Thank you.
Bravo is right. Okay, Happy. Thank you. Hope you're good. Oh, you're on mute, I think.
I still need a minute. Thank you.
Okay. Well, then let's go ahead and I'll talk about some our upcoming speakers and upcoming events. Hold that. There we go. Okay. We'll go one more slide past Mark's. Okay, there we go. We have one more meeting on Zoom, folks. How about that? Isn't that crazy town? And then we'll be back in person. So our meeting next week, which is the last Friday in March, will be Lori Kreider. She'll be here. Happy is the program chair of the day to talk to us about the American Foundation on Suicide Prevention. And then we will be off on April 2nd, celebrating the holiday. So no meeting, and then back in person in Maggiano's on April 9th. Stephanie Free will be our speaker, talking to us about senior housing options in today's world. And Richard Stanford is our chair of the day for that. Thank you, Richard. And we just have a couple of upcoming events. Both of them are district events. The first one is on Saturday, April 10th, is the district assembly. That is a training-oriented district event. It's for the incoming officers and directors of all of the clubs, excuse me. And then the district conference is a celebration, and that is Friday through and Saturday, April 23rd and 24th. Happy and I and Richard, and I think maybe a couple others will be attending virtually, but Happy and I and Richard will be there in person on Saturday. But Friday, when they do the noon meeting, Richard will be filling in because he has a speaker of the day that day. So thank you, Richard, as always. All right. Let's see. Happy, are you think you're good to go now? If not, we're going to go on to the speaker and we can pick up Mark's advertising spotlight at the end of the speaker.
That would be great. Thank you.
Okay, we'll come to that at the end then. Okay. Well, back real quick to the April 9th meeting in person at Maggiano's. You need to register in advance for that. And that is online on our homepage right now. Happy set that event up through all of our meetings, the 4 meetings remaining in April. So the homepage is parkcitiesrotary.org, and look to the right side of the homepage and you'll see register as an eater or a non-eater. So we just need a head count in advance. But well, I'm going to turn it over to Jeff. He's is our program chair of the day and has been working with Dan to, and I'm going to turn it to Jeff and let him introduce Dan. Thank you.
Thanks, Barb. Well, guys, we're really looking forward to having Dan speak today. And just a little background, I'm sure you've all seen Dan on Channel 4. But Dan's the chief meteorologist at Fox 4 in Dallas, where he leads a team of 5 talented meteorologists who deliver daily weather forecasts and provide continuous live coverage during severe weather outbreaks in the nation's 5th largest TV market, in the largest metropolitan area in Tornado Alley, which we are definitely in, clearly. Dan started his professional career with Techniques Development Lab, a branch of the National Weather Service, developing computer model-based statistical guidance for weather forecasting. From there, he made the jump to television, beginning his broadcasting career at WEC-TV in Wilmington, North Carolina in 1990. Dan is a 5-time Emmy Award-winning certified broadcast meteorologist with 30 years of on-air experience. His broadcast experience includes nearly 10 years of environmental and science reporting, live coverage of many tornado outbreaks on location, reporting during several notable hurricanes, including Hurricanes Bonnie, Fran, Floyd, and Opal, and writing and producing and hosting numerous severe weather specials and stories. So please, let's welcome Dan Henry.
Thank you very much for that very thorough introduction. I appreciate that. You know, it's been a wild 4 or 5 weeks here in North Texas. Obviously, we got well accustomed to what it feels like in Minneapolis in winter here in North Texas. The difference is we're not as prepared as they are in Minnesota for -2 degrees. You know, I've spoken for many years here in North Texas, been here almost 20 years. And honestly, I never thought that we'd see a temperature below 0 here in the Metroplex again. And lo and behold, we did. In fact, we had 3 consecutive mornings where we dipped below 10 degrees. We had 2 extended stretches of below freezing weather that combined was over 200 hours. So arguably the only other time in recorded history that we were that cold was back in December of 1983. And then we literally went from that record-breaking cold to severe weather season. And things turn on a dime here in North Texas. So, you know, people always ask me, what do I like most about my job? I just think it's challenging. It's never the same because our weather is constantly changing day to day and week to week. And it really keeps me on my toes. You know, we're getting into that time of the year now, mid-March through mid to late May, where we see the bulk of our severe weather with the threat of tornadoes and large hail and damaging winds. That said, the last 2 significant severe weather outbreaks that we've had here in North Texas have been the day after Christmas, 2015, and October 2019. 2 out of season events, significant severe weather events. And so what I tell people is you literally need to be prepared for anything here in North Texas, literally all year long. And you know, it is shown time and time again that we are subject to a number of weather extremes. And I've worked all over the country. And I've worked in places like Washington, D.C., that has 4 distinct seasons, Pennsylvania, the Carolinas. But what I would tell people is that here in North Texas, we not only get, you know, those varied seasons, but sometimes we get them all within a course of 24 hours. And so the weather changes here so dramatically and so quickly, almost more so than anywhere else in the country. And it's really because of the geography, where we're located here in the Southern Plains, where cold air masses, as we witnessed, can come barreling southward. Gulf moisture flows in here freely from the south. The Rocky Mountains to our west play a critical role in altering weather systems that move in from the west. And so all these ingredients come together to produce some very interesting weather here in North Texas. When I sat down to get started with my weather book a couple of years ago, I wanted to tell the hows and whys of all of the varied weather that we get here, from how lightning forms, why we get up to baseball and softball sized hail, what makes tornadoes tick? Why is it that some thunderstorms can rotate for literally a couple of hours and never produce a tornado, and one that looks rather innocuous all of a sudden 5 minutes later is producing an EF3 tornado? And those are all questions that I answer in the book. But the other thing that I wanted to accomplish with this book, and by the way, it's called Menacing Skies, Texas Weather and Stories of Survival. That's really one of my favorite parts of writing this book, was conducting these interviews with people like you and me that have survived some of the worst weather ever encountered here in North Texas. And I go all the way back to 1957 with one of my interviews, a gentleman that was on board a bus, a city bus. He and his sister were visiting dad in downtown Dallas. They got on the bus to head back to Oak Cliff, and their bus nearly intercepted that 57 tornado as it was crossing right in front of them. He tells a fascinating story. I interview survivors of the day after Christmas tornadoes, including a couple that was in a pickup truck that literally drove right into that tornado. I interview people that survived a terrible flash flood in the middle of the night. The entire family literally had to swim out of the window of their home, and then they were in 15-foot deep water, raging floodwaters just south of Dallas in Ellis County. Probably my favorite interview, though, was with a gentleman by the name of Richard Laver. If you were here in 1985, longtime North Texans may recall a terrible air crash at DFW Airport. It was a wind shear event that downed Delta Flight 191 that was bound from Fort Lauderdale to California with a stop at DFW Airport. Richard Laver and his father were on that flight. Richard was a budding young tennis star. He was about 11 years old at the time, flying out to a tennis tournament in Southern California. Laver may ring a bell if you're a tennis fan. Rod Laver, Hall of Fame tennis player, was his uncle. And so obviously tennis ran deep in that family. But as they were approaching DFW Airport, they flew into a thunderstorm. And back in 1985, we didn't have wind shear alert systems like we have today installed at every major airport in the country. There are wind shear alert systems on all aircraft as well that alert the crew, the pilots, that they are encountering wind shear and to divert, because the most dangerous time in a thunderstorm is on takeoff and landing. And in this case, they flew into this thunderstorm and they hit a nasty, nasty downburst, downward current moving air that was 85 to 90 miles an hour. They crash landed north of Highway 114. At that time, it was just all open grassy fields. And they're barreling across this grassy open field at 200 miles an hour, bouncing up and down. They reach Highway 114 and the right wing clips 3 of the huge light standards. They ramble across the highway. They crushed one car. The occupant was killed. And then at this point in time, the right's engine is on fire, but the aircraft is still intact. Had they not clipped with the left wing the 2 big water tanks on the left side of the runway, they may have not endured the tragedy that they did. But once that happened, once that left wing hit the water tanks on the left side of the runway, the aircraft literally burst into flames. It exploded. From row 33 to the front of the aircraft, there was hardly anything left of it. Very, very few survivors in that part of the aircraft. He was sitting, Richard and his father, in row 34. And from row 34 back, that rear portion of the aircraft was still intact, burned very badly. Sadly, his father was killed in this air crash, as were 130 others. Richard was ejected. He wasn't just wearing his seatbelt at the time. He was ejected from the aircraft through the fireball He suffered third-degree burns literally from head to toe, landed in the field, nearly drowned because recall, they clipped these huge water tanks, so thousands of gallons of water spilling out into this grassy field just north of the runway. If it weren't for a passerby, and there were several passerbys on 114, motorists, that plucked him out of the field. Now, when he was rescued, this thunderstorm is still raging. There are literally over 80-mile-an-hour winds. There's lightning, there's hail falling. The wind is carrying the rain sideways. And so there's still very dangerous weather conditions here. But a motorist plucked him out of the field. He was taken by ambulance to Parkland Hospital, where he spent the next 4 weeks, and he survived. I won't tell you the rest of the story because it's fascinating, but what he does from that point in his life, he literally becomes a CEO of a multi-million-dollar company that he founds. It's just nothing short of amazing. And I tell his entire story in the book. And really, that I feel privileged and honored to have spoken to a number of people, a number of tornado survivors, flash flood survivors. Richard, I talked to a firefighter who fought the terrible wildfires at Possum Kingdom Lake several years ago, and what it was like facing literally walls of fire that were racing up and down the hills out there in Palo Pinto County at more than 50 miles an hour. Truly amazing stories. And that makes up a really important part of the book itself. I think it brings the book to life. Another thing, and I have to give Stephanie Holen credit for this because she gave me the idea. We've all become accustomed, I think, in the days of COVID here with QR codes. You scan those QR codes at your restaurant and it brings up the menu. Well, there are several QR codes in my book, like this one itself. And you'll find those interspersed, throughout the book, but they'll bring up animations of tornadoes, or I should say video clips of tornadoes, animations that explain the polar vortex, which was behind the outbreak of Arctic air, that repeated Arctic blast that we saw this past winter. One of my favorite QR codes in the book is in the chapter on climate change. It's the final chapter of the book. I know it's a very controversial subject. It seems like every time we talk about climate change, we get into politics right away. But boy, it really opened my eyes. But in this particular case, there were two researchers who were sitting out on the Greenland ice sheet, and they were studying icebergs for days and days. And you can imagine that's probably a pretty boring assignment. And each day at the same time, they called their superior back at the university to tell them what was going on. And each day there was really nothing going on. They were just watching ice, except for one day. And they literally, the video clip captures them talking to their superior back at the university. And yeah, nothing's going, what, hold on a second. And literally before their eyes, over the next few minutes, an iceberg 3 times the size of Manhattan breaks apart from this ice sheet. And it's the most mesmerizing video that you'll ever watch, to see this enormous slab of ice break off of the actual main sheet itself into the Arctic Ocean. It's just astounding to watch that video. But there are many clips like that in the book itself that you can literally scan the QR code and it'll bring it right up on your iPhone or your Android, and so you can kind of be further immersed into the material that's being presented. But it was a very fun book to write, and like I said, I think it will answer just about any question that you have regarding North Texas weather. At this point, I'd just like to kind of open it up for questions here that you may have, anything about the book itself or what I do covering the weather on Fox 4, or anything about weather in general. Probably the easiest way to ask me a question too would be to put it in the chat window there on the side.
Yeah, you can do either, or you can just unmute and ask Dan a question, or you can type it in the chat room and he'll see it there.
It's
Can you
gonna,
hear me? Oh, go ahead. Somebody got it?
Yeah, I was going to say I was in the middle of chatting, but this is easier.
This
Um,
is easier, yes.
For what reason the Earth is warming? I mean, they can say whatever they want to say politically about it. Do you expect, as a result of that, if it keeps warming, more violent weather, both cold and hot, more tornadoes, more 0-degree days? You know, what would be your guess based if the Earth continues to warm like this?
Well, there have been very large panels of meteorologists and climatologists and atmospheric scientists, physicists that have been studying that question that you asked for many years now. There's a special panel that's been assembled, and every 4 years they write a report on the state of climate change. And then they attempt to also address how the changing climate may affect our future weather. In terms of severe weather, it's a little bit hard to tell. We do know, though, that a warmer Earth means warmer oceans, and so hurricanes, we believe, are going to be stronger, more intense, because they feed off of the moisture released by the warm oceans, and so we have seen, it seems like, an uptick in hurricane activity over the last decade or so, more intense storms. We've also seen these storms produce tremendous amounts of rain. I think 6 of the top 10 rainfall records in the United States in terms of tropical systems are right here in Texas. We had Harvey, we had Imelda. Harvey produced rainfall amounts of over 60 inches in parts of the greater Houston area, unprecedented rainfall. Katrina, we saw terrible flooding as well. And one of the reasons why in a warmer atmosphere, there's less temperature contrast between north and southern latitudes. And it's these temperature contrasts that drive the jet streams. And so if there's less temperature contrast, the jet streams overall weaken. And those are the steering currents that drive these systems along. And so if you have weaker steering currents, that means that you're going to have slower moving tropical systems. In fact, sometimes they even stall out. So slower moving systems, higher rainfall rates, because they're deriving more energy from the warmer Gulf, the warmer oceans, and higher rainfall rates, slower movement means more rainfall and more potential for flooding. And that's exactly what we've seen. The temperature, the global temperature has increased about 2 degrees Celsius over the last century or so. And we expect not only a continuation of that, but we expect that warming to increase over the next 50 to 100 years. And it really all goes back to the release of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. The Earth has a natural greenhouse effect. In fact, if we didn't have a natural greenhouse effect, if we didn't trap some of that warm air near the surface, the planet would be uninhabitable. The average temperature would be about 20 degrees. All the bodies of water on Earth would be frozen, and we wouldn't be able to survive. But because we have a natural greenhouse effect, the normal average temperature is about 58 degrees. But we've accelerated that. We've intensified that greenhouse effect with the release of carbon dioxide due to burning of fossil fuels, namely, using coal to heat, and also automobiles are a tremendous source of carbon dioxide. And so that release of CO2 into the atmosphere enhances that greenhouse effect and increases the warming. And that's why since the Industrial Revolution, we've seen over a 2 degrees Celsius warming of the planet. I know that's a lot of information to throw at you, but it's just a huge topic. I really go into a lot of detail too about some of the natural, climate variability, El Nino, La Nina, volcanic eruptions, the phases, the cycles of the sun itself, And so I talk a lot about that as well. But really, the overwhelming impact is kind of, what humans are doing, and the release of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere.
Well, thank you. That's a great answer.
We've got a question from past President Paul. Dan, do you think events like we had last month will happen more frequently?
I don't think so. I think that truly was, a once in a generation type of event to see below zero temperatures here in North Texas. We're going to see more Arctic outbreaks, but I don't think that we're going to see anything that bitterly cold for quite some time again. In fact, for many of us, that may be the coldest weather we experience here in North Texas for the rest of our lifetime. It's somebody asked, it was an Arctic vortex that caused our really cold weather. I talk about what's called the polar vortex. The polar vortex has been around, since the beginning of time. And what that basically, the easiest way for me to describe that is, it's typically like a very fast spinning top. And when a top spins very, very fast, it's stable. It doesn't wobble much at all. And the polar vortex is this belt of very strong winds that circles the North Pole. And that typically keeps that bitterly cold air corralled near the North Pole. But what happened this past winter is that it became weaker. And like a more slowly moving top, it began to wobble. And when it wobbles and becomes less stable, you can get these lobes of very cold air that break off of the actual spinning vortex itself. And in this case, a huge lobe of this very cold air broke off, and it traveled southward out of Canada into the northern United States. And it released repeated blasts of Arctic air over a period of 10 days. And with each progressive blast of Arctic air, our temperatures got colder. And then, as you recall, we had quite a bit of snow. In fact, the entire central United States, from literally the Canadian border all the way down, literally to the Gulf Coast, was covered in snow. And so typically these Arctic air masses moderate somewhat, but in this case, they didn't. They were moving over very cold, snow-covered ground, and so they didn't lose much of their bitter cold nature. And so we ended up seeing those record cold temperatures. Somebody asked here, the National Weather Service, are they the ones that interrupt the TV programming during a storm? Why is it so technically poor? Too loud, bad audio? So the answer to your question is, we make the decision, the local TV stations, whether or not to interrupt programming. The National Weather Service is in charge with issuing the warnings. So they are the ones that issue the tornado warnings. They issue the severe thunderstorm warnings. We don't have anything to do with that. But when a tornado warning is issued for the greater Dallas-Fort Worth area, we generally will break into programming to let our viewers know what's going on. The biggest problem with that is that 98% of the viewing public is not being impacted by the storm that we're interrupting TV programming for. And so they tend to get pretty angry about that. And they'll let us know. When I interrupt Judge Judy, people get really, really mad about it. Back when American Idol was in its heyday, boy, I mean, I had to make really, really sure that we had a verified storm with a tornado or with very large hail if I wanted to interrupt that particular programming itself. Back in October 2019, we had our regularly scheduled newscast on the air right at 9 o'clock when that tornado warning went out for North Dallas. Channel 5 had on the Cowboys game. And so they only did a couple of very short interruptions, and they ended up taking a lot of flack for it the next day because of that. And I can feel for them. We've been in that same similar situation before where, boy, I remember several years ago, I interrupted the season finale of Glee for a tornado warning for Tarrant County. As it turns out, the tornado never verified, and we got a flood of calls and angry emails into the newsroom for literally the next few days in the wake of that. So you have to have a thick skin, certainly, to be in that business. Any theories as to why allergies now seem to last all year rather than just seasonally? Good question. Obviously our spring allergies have everything to do with the trees budding and the grass greening up. And so you have grass pollens and tree pollens. And then as we get into the summertime, especially late summer, you get into ragweed season here. That lasts several weeks until we have a killing freeze. And so I think we have an extended ragweed season here because we have these dry summers that tend to promote the growth of this ragweed. And then we don't see that killing freeze, it seems like, until about Thanksgiving. And so you can suffer from ragweed all through September and October, even into November here in North Texas. And then what we deal with in the wintertime is what we call cedar fever with cedar pollen. And you have to remember that the prevailing winds here in North Texas are out of the south about 90% of the time, even in the wintertime. And anytime we get a gusty, especially a southwesterly wind, it blows all that cedar pollen up from the Texas Hill Country and South Texas into North Texas here. Now, we don't get the kind of counts they do down in Austin and San Antonio, where they can be several thousand grains per cubic meter on any particular day. You may have seen videos where the wind will shake some of those cedar trees, and this huge cloud, this yellow cloud, becomes airborne. But we still see enough of it blowing in here on those south to southwesterly winds that it can give allergy sufferers fits. And so I can relate. I'm a 10 on a scale of 1 to 10 in terms of my seasonal allergies. And they're about a problem about 11 out of the 12 months a year here. See, I'm trying to see if I've answered, I think I've answered most of the questions
Yeah, I
there
think you have.
in the
Oh,
chat.
here's another one from Jeff.
Winter storm. Okay. Losers here in North Tech where the animals. Yeah, we did have, I thought I read an article last week that there were over 3 million, I think 3.8 million fish that were killed along the Gulf shores, the Texas Gulf shores here as a result of this very cold weather. I know that a couple of wildlife relief organizations down in South Texas went out and rescued a number of turtles, a massive number of sea turtles. Was there anything unique about this storm that caused the loss of animal life? I just think that, our marine life, obviously manatees in Florida too suffer the same type of consequences when we have these unusual Arctic intrusions of air, and they can be lethal to the manatee population in Florida. But fish are used to the prevailing weather that we see from throughout the course of many years, and this was, boy, we hadn't seen anything like this since the early 80s. And so it had been 40 years since we'd seen cold weather like this. And obviously it's going to have an impact on not only humans, but marine life, as well. Yeah, that was the last question there. I'm not an expert on that topic, so I can only kind of only touch a little bit on that. But some animal life is tougher and more resistant, than others to handle, the varied array of weather that we see here in North Texas.
Hi, this is Arthur Boland.
Hello there.
Great watching all the different coverage on the different channels. Do the different channels work off the same data set? And is there much variation on how the different channels use the data?
So, on a day like today, there's not going to be a whole lot of difference in the forecast. We're probably going to interpret the the weather data about the same. our competitors may be going sunny today with a high of 63, and we may be sunny and a high of 64. But there's no chance of rain. The wind direction may vary just a little bit. But, during the more significant weather events that we have, and especially when you look at an extended forecast beyond day 5, let's say, there could be quite a bit of difference from station to station. And yes, we all interpret the data differently. I know Rick over at Channel 5, he has his interpretation of the various computer models. There may be certain models that he likes better than others. I may look at the stuff and then look at the weather services, the National Weather Service forecast, and wonder, what the heck are they looking at? And so sometimes I'll actually call them up and we'll compare notes and ask each other, okay, what are you looking at? Or what are you seeing that I'm not seeing, and vice versa. And so it's kind of like, there is a little bit of that artistic flair in it. Somebody may look at a piece of art one way and interpret it to, completely different than somebody else that is looking at the same picture or the same painting. And that goes with weather data as well, and computer models. And a lot of it too has to do with your past experience, and you draw on that and you recognize weather patterns and you think, okay, I know in this particular case, this computer model does not handle it very well at all, and you throw that out. But that's kind of the neat thing about what we do, is that we each kind of put our own stamp, on our forecasts. Let's see, how has the proliferation of immediate online access to all information, including weather, affected your delivery methods? That's a very good question. I find that, with these things here, it's really changed the game, because now everybody is this roving weather reporter. And so back when I first got started in the business back in 1990, you'd be lucky if you got maybe one photo of, hail, or perhaps even a funnel cloud during an entire event. We didn't have that. In fact, I didn't even have the internet back then to rely on. We didn't have the National Weather Service chat session that we do nowadays, where all these storm chasers and emergency managers and law enforcement are feeding information into this one central chat room for all of us to look at. And certainly we didn't have iPhones and Androids. And so nowadays, we can almost do a play-by-play of the severe weather as it's happening, not only with our radar, but we can actually show live feeds from our storm chasers as they're maybe out in Palo Pinto County somewhere. And we can bring up their live feed showing the actual wall cloud, and then showing the rotating wall cloud, and then the tornado actually develop. I've done that a number of times live on the air. People have actually seen the birth of a tornado right before their eyes, and then we follow it along. Photos, hundreds and hundreds of photos of hail. So that's really been a game changer for us. Social media, obviously. People are posting stuff on our social media pages that we share with people, on the air. Obviously computer models have become better more high resolution than they ever have before. Our radar is bigger and badder than it ever has been, in previous years. And so it really has changed completely. I will say this though, as computer models and Doppler radars get better and better, people expect more out of your forecast. It would have been 15 or 20 years ago good enough to tell somebody it was going to rain tomorrow. Now they want to know, when is the rain going to start? When is it going to end? How much am I going to get? And so all these very highly specific questions, and still, it is somewhat of an educated guessing game when it comes to determining, we can tell you, for instance, on a particular day, yeah, we're going to get severe weather here in North Texas, but it's impossible to tell you if it's going to be in Dallas County or Carlin County, or maybe it's going to be down in Hill County. It's, you know, it's kind of like throwing a bunch of popcorn kernels in a pot and telling somebody, you know, which ones are going to pop, which ones are going to pop first, and which ones aren't going to pop at all. You just don't know. It's kind of one of those still mysteries of the science that we have yet to unravel, and probably won't do so for a very long time.
Well, Dan, I'm going to bring you to a simpler time. We all remember the comedian George Carlin back in the good old days. One of his quotes was,
Don't need a weatherman to know which way. Yeah.
weather forecast for tonight.
Oh, yeah.
Dark. Continued dark overnight with widely scattered light by morning. Those were simpler times.
Yep. That I know that stand-up routine very well. I see somebody commented on the WAP. The WAP is a great, useful tool. You can download it for free from the iPhone store. I would also recommend an app called Radar Scope. It's $10, but it'll give you access to live radar and warnings all across the country. So if you go on vacation somewhere, you can change the radar with the click of a button and literally track the storms, you know, right where you're vacationing. Just one more reminder, the book, you can go to my website, danhenryweather.com, to purchase it. But if you go to the website, only hardbacks are available. If you want a soft cover, you can pay me through Venmo, and that information's up top in the chat session, or through PayPal. But make sure you include your name and address. Sometimes people purchase books and they don't give us their name and address, and we have to track that down so we know where to send it. But hardbacks are $30 and soft covers are $25. We'd appreciate anything that you'd like to do to help us out there. A lighthearted question: what's your favorite meteorologist joke? Boy, that's a good question. The Carlin one is probably up there. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. You know, sometimes I'll tell people, you know, I never get the forecast wrong. We just sometimes mix up the days. But it's you have to kind of be lighthearted about it, because people will let you know. We're kind of like baseball umpires. 90% of the time we get it right, but nobody talks about the bang bang call that the umpire or the ref in the football game got right. They talk about the 10% of the calls that they got wrong, and so you have to have a sense of humor about it. And you just have to realize when you make a bad forecast, you just get right back on the horse and ride again. You got to quickly put that behind you and keep doing what you're doing. Somebody asked, how far off are we able to control the weather? Yeah, a long way off. We've attempted to do that. We still to this day, we still do seed clouds, release chemicals in the atmosphere that can help. When we say seed the clouds, clouds grow by what are called cloud condensation nuclei. So that can be particles of dust or soot or certain chemicals. And so they form as seeds for cloud droplets to grow. And it takes millions and millions of cloud droplets to form even a small cloud. There was experimentation back in the 1950s and 60s, a project called Project Storm Fury, where they tried to release chemicals into hurricanes, and they thought that they would cause them to kind of self-destruct, but that never proved to be fruitful at all. And so really, you got to kind of watch that. I mean, there's a reason why we have hurricanes. There's a reason why we have big storms. They redistribute heat and moisture. The atmosphere doesn't like to be out of balance. And so the only way we have to restore that balance is the movement of air and wind. And the most effective way to do that is with big storm systems. And if we didn't have big storms, the atmosphere would get really, really out of whack and out of equilibrium. And so, you know, we have to just live with the weather that comes to us day by day. And we have to kind of learn that, you know, and this kind of gets into a little politics as well, but, you know, the ocean tends to reclaim what belongs to it. And so when when we build big homes on the ocean front, we do that at our own risk. And when you build homes in canyons that are subject to fire and high winds, you do that at your own risk. And so I think we as humans tend to tempt fate a lot. And then we want to adjust the weather so that it doesn't bring us harm. But I mean, really, weather is a necessary part of the atmosphere, the Earth's atmosphere. It's the atmosphere in motion.
If we don't have any additional questions, I think we're toward the end of our meeting here. Dan, this was great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Yeah, it was nice chatting with you.
You know, Betty, another quote that Betty put in the hub was, if we didn't have weather to talk about, most of us wouldn't have a conversation. So.
This is very true. Yeah.
It's very true.
It tends to be the fallback at most gatherings, especially when people don't know each other that well.
That's right. Well, in honor of your speaking to us today and taking the time, we'll be placing a book in the Preston Hollow Library at the Preston Hollow Elementary School.
Oh, well, thank you very much. That's very
You're
kind.
welcome, and thank you for the time. I'm going to go back to Happy at this point. We're going to highlight our Marketplace Advertiser of the Day. Or you're on mute, Happy. Happy, you're on mute.
Can you hear me? It says
yes.
Okay, great. Today's PCR Marketplace advertiser is Mark Neese. Mark Neese is a native Texan who has enjoyed living in many parts of the U.S. and has traveled all around the world. He has a strong passion for golf, scouting, Rotary, the environment, and volunteering. Mark returned to the Dallas area in 2003 to settle in with his growing family. He is an assistant scoutmaster in with his 17-year-old son's Boy Scout troop. He serves as district commissioner for the Tejas, Caddo District, and Circle 10 Council, and he and Max are both Brotherhood members of the Order of the Arrow, Scouting's National Honor Society. He's been a member of the Rotary Club of Park City since 2014. And he's a Paul Harris Fellow. Mark has been involved in film and video production since 1990. He started his own video production company in 2008. His company has grown to become a leading video marketing and consulting firm, now called Sync Lab Media. They help organizations of all sizes and industries get better results from their marketing efforts by implementing video-centric marketing strategies and virtual sales processes. Mark is also available to speak to groups on media literacy, video marketing, and industry trends. Some of the services that Sync Lab Media provides includes brand mapping, digital marketing strategy, HD 4K video production in the studio and on location, drone photography and video, visual FX and animation, content optimization and management, social community management, digital marketing training and support, and many other things. Just amazing. So his video content production experience includes network commercial, broadcast television, feature film, corporate, live webcasts, live event, and online content. Mark also owns the Caddy Club, the premier premium provider of on-demand golf caddy services in North Texas, serving corporate and charity events, amateur and professional golfers, and private clubs since 2003. Caddy Club has helped many of the North Texas's top charities raise millions of sponsorship dollars and provides hundreds of local golf industry job opportunities during that time. Let's thank Mark Neese for his sponsorship for the PCR Marketplace advertising spot this week. Thank you, Mark.
I second that, and thank you, Happy. As we all know, Mark does a lot for our club. Well, we're going to wrap up our meeting here. If you would please unmute and join me in reciting the four-way test. Of the things we think, say, or do. First,
The truth.
second,
Fair
to all concerned.
third,
Will build goodwill,
and
better friendship. Fourth, will be beneficial to all concerned.
And with that, I hereby close this meeting. You all have a wonderful weekend. Bye-bye.
Bye.
See you next week. Bye, everybody. Take care.
Bye.
Okay. Yeah, you can end.